Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Give us about 1 more minute and we will get started.
All right, Ms. Dina, it looks like everyone from the waiting room is in and we are live streaming, so the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Holly. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dina Snyder, and I am the Director of Finance and Operations with the Children's Services Council. As a reminder, if you have any questions, please make sure to utilize the chat link at the bottom, and we will make sure to make time at the end of our presentation to answer any questions that come up. CSC Leon would like to welcome you to the 2023 Summer Bridge RFA informational webinar. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today as we provide an overview on the application process. I would like to take a quick moment to inform participants who is present for our team with us today. We have Ms. Jacinta Clay, our Administrative Services Manager, Ms. Stephanie Eller-Vaughn, our Program Accountability and Research Manager, Ms. Holly McPhail, our Special Projects Manager, and Ms. Sika Green, our Executive Director. Next slide, please. Excuse me, I apologize. You will see well, I am not seeing the PowerPoint, Holly. Give me one quick second.
My apologies, it'll be up in just a moment. Apparently, every time I try to share my screen, Zoom decides that it doesn't like it. So
we have to love technology. Give us one quick second.
Thanks for your patience. We request that everybody mute their line, please.
We can see the PowerPoint presentation now, and if I may ask our participants to please be muted, that will help us minimize any background noises. Thank you so much. Next slide, please, Holly. You will see on the agenda that we will cover what is different this year, the RFA scoring and application, results-based accountability, the reporting expectations. We will walk through the timeline, and at the end, we will have time for questions and answers. This webinar is being live streamed and recorded. Any questions discussed during the webinar will also be a part of the Q&A responses posted on our website. Next slide, please. We always like to start with our theory of change to keep at the forefront of what we do, how CSC Leon, along with our community investment partners, that is you all, is investing in our community to improve the lives and outcomes for children, youth, and families. The Summer Bridge RFA will be addressing 2 of our priority areas, success in school and life, and stable and nurturing families and communities. The summer funding intent is comprised of 2 service lines, summer learning, which falls under priority area 1 to increase school readiness and provide school-age supports, and summer feeding, which falls under priority area 3, addressing food stability for children and families. For summer learning, CSC Leon is seeking proposals to expand access to quality school-age summer learning programs. These funds are designed to expand on services and not to pilot or test new programs. An example of this would be if you are already receiving funding to serve 10 children and there is a need to serve an additional 10, the application could be accepted for consideration as it is expanding on an existing program. Excuse me. For summer feeding, CSC Leon is seeking proposals to expand the availability of nutritious food for children, youth, and their families through the addition to or extension of existing summer feeding programs and innovative meal provision solutions. An example of this would be if you receive funding for a summer break spot and the need to feed other family members is identified, the application could be accepted for consideration as it is expanding on existing services. The purpose of today's training is to walk you through the application on the virtual portal. I will now turn it over to Ms. Holly to continue with our presentation.
Thank you so much. I am excited to join you guys today. And as I just want to reinforce the message that Dina shared, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat so that we are able to record them for anyone who might not have joined us. We might go and respond depending upon the questions as we go, but we will likely wait until the very end. But because the first question has already been posed, I do just want to let everyone know that the session that is being recorded and all of the questions and the slides will be made available to everyone who has registered, as well as posted on our website as one of our technical assistance opportunities. Now, to think through some of the things that are different this year is probably the first and foremost thing is that we have capacity building trainings scheduled to be part of this process. And it starts with our Quality Summer Learning Program Design, which is a 2-hour in-person training with a subject matter expertise. Originally, that was supposed to be this morning, as well as one next week, but our trainer unfortunately caught the crud that seems to be going around Tallahassee right now. And so both of those will occur next week. If you were previously registered for the one this morning, you should have received a notice that it was rescheduled and given you the opportunity to choose to go to the new one. So they will both be held in person Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning at our training facility located at 2002 Old St. Augustine Road. In addition to that, we are very excited to announce that we have a partnership with the Institute for Nonprofit Innovation and Excellence to provide capacity building training to help you make your strongest application possible. It is a series of webinars and in-person trainings that you will register directly with them. The dates and the topics are on your screen, and I do know that Kim is with us today. So if Kim, you want to drop the link into the chat so that people can find this information directly, that would be fantastic. In addition, that link is available on our website as well as in the follow-up emails and registration emails that you should have received for today. The second thing that is going to be different about this year is required data collection. Last year, for those of you who might have applied or received funding, you know that you are required to report on the number of families served through your program and as well as kind of keep your budget up to date. Those will still continue to be things, but any entity who is funded will be required to use our Services and Activities Management Information System, which we call SAMIS, and that collects participant level information and program level information. In the RFA, you will see very descriptive sections about the required data elements that you will have to capture and what those reporting elements will be. All of that will be captured in our data system. So we want you to be sure that as you're designing your proposal, that you're thinking through your budget and your staffing structure to ensure that you have the support that you need to make sure that you can meet those expectations. We will dive deeper into each of those expectations with our Program Accountability and Research Manager a little bit later in today's training, but I just want everyone to be aware up front that these are pretty different from things that we required last year. And as we continue to release funding opportunities from CSC Leon, you'll continue to see that program accountability, those measures continue to increase with levels of investment. So what we're really here for is to talk about the RFA scoring and application. So I'll dive right into that. For scoring, as the RFA explains, there are 3 primary pieces. One is the relevant experience and relationships, and you will get up to 20 points for that section. Most of that is built on what is called your organizational profile, but it does pull in from other elements in the portal, which we'll show you in just a moment. The second piece is the proposal narrative. This is what we like to say is the meat and potatoes of what you're proposing to do in terms of how you'll spend the money, what you'll do, what your staffing structure looks like, and really get into, depending upon if you're applying for service line 1, which is for summer learning, or service line 2, which is for summer feeding, the actual kind of nitty gritty of how you'll do the work and what elements will be a part of the work. And finally, the third section will be budget, which is up to 30 points. This is really where we're going to be looking for you to show that the budget that you're proposing of how you'll spend what you're asking is a supplement to your existing budget. So we've already received a couple of questions over the course of just via email asking about, do you want to see how we want to spend the money, or you want to see our current budget? And the answer is yes, and or both. So we want to understand kind of your financial solvency, but we also want to understand how you will spend the money as well. I am pleased to report that we will still be doing the allocation method as opposed to cost reimbursement. And Ms. Snyder, near the end of the session today, will talk a little bit more about what to expect should you be awarded funding. What's also different this year, and this was related directly to feedback received last year, is that all responsive applications will be invited to make a 20-minute presentation, and that could influence the score. So while your presentation itself is not a separately scored item, you will be asked to present on some of the experience relationships, the narrative, and you might get asked questions about the budget, and that presentation could influence your ultimate scores in each of those sections. What we mean by responsive applications is just that you meet the eligibility criteria for the various service lines as outlined in the RFA. So one of those, and the very first one that you'll even see in the application, is are you licensed to do business in the state of Florida? And we're really looking for proof through kind of the SunBiz portal, which we'll show you in just a moment as well. So thinking through your application, and in just a moment, I'm going to give you a live view of that portal, and we're going to walk through that as if it's in kind of like a live mode. And then at the end of today's session, the portal button on our website will go live, and you'll have a direct link. You'll also receive an email follow-up with that link directly to the portal. You will be pleased to know that you can enter the portal and you can save as you go. You can leave the portal, and then you will get an email link going back to your piece of the application. So we know that was a little bit of a headache last year. That has been fixed for this year. So with that, these are all of the sections we're about to go through. I'm going to stop sharing here and start sharing on another screen. Let me get it queued up. Apologies. I had it queued up a second ago when my computer decided it did not like me. All right. So when you first go to the portal, if you've been there before, it will show you this where it says discard and start over or continue with draft if you have it open. I already had it open, which is why it's asking me, but usually you'll come in and it'll just look like this. It starts with just some basic information about the RFA and letting you know the requirements to make sure that you'll be able to come back in. Your browser must be enabled to accept cookies. So if you are using DuckDuckGo as your browser or one of the other more secure browsers, it won't save. But if you're using Edge or Google Chrome or even Firefox, as long as you have cookies enabled, you'll be fine to be able to come and go for this. If you have any questions about technical assistance, you'll see this pop up throughout, and our email address for questions will constantly pop up throughout your process. So you simply click begin, and the first question that it asks is, are you legally authorized to conduct business? If you click no, and if you hover, it'll say you will be required to show proof. If you click no and click next, it will tell you, sorry, you can't continue. So making sure that you are authorized to conduct business, you click next, and then you'll start your organizational profile. For the purposes of today, I'm just going to put in CSC Leon and then scroll through. We are, as listed in the RFA, asking for primary contact details for the individual completing the application, and then some basic information about your organization. Throughout the entire application, you'll see that there's pop-ups and hovers and suggestions of what you should include in each of the pieces. You'll also see where it's asking you to upload files. And thank you to our partnership with Any. If you have any questions about where to find these types of documents like your SunBiz registration, their first session, that's actually tomorrow, will help you access and know exactly where to look. Also in our RFA, we say that you do not have to be a 501c3. However, if in the case of a tie and we only have enough funds to give 2 organizations with matching scores, the 501c3 preference will be granted as a tiebreaker only. So that is why we're asking for that information. So if you do have it, please make sure that you're indicating that and that you are uploading your IRS determination letter. We also ask for your current certificate of insurance and proof of liability coverage, and that's just to kind of cover whatever you're doing right now. You do not have to have the limits that we're requiring in the RFA unless you get selected for funding, in which case we would ask for an updated version. Then we start to go into a little bit of your financial background, and that is your current operating budget. So this does not include what you're requesting money from CSC. Identifying your fiscal start date, and then just a copy of either your annual budget, your 990, a profit and loss statement. We recognize that all of our community investment partners might be at different places. So maybe you just have a profit and loss statement, maybe you have a full 990, or maybe you just have access to your annual budget. Whichever one you have is what we're asking for you to include here. We are asking you to break down your current sources of income, and the collection of all of these should equal 100%. So thinking through all of your income of where it comes from and breaking that down by percentage. This last question in this section for your organizational profile is identifying if you are a past recipient of summer funding investment. That is not a requirement. If you were or you were not, it will not include or preclude you from consideration for this year. But this just helps us collect that information to know who our continuation partners are. You'll see here that it says, right, if you want to save, you can. And when you click save, it loads it up and it will send you an email. I've already input my stuff, so it already knows me, but it will resend that email, or you can click to get that shareable link. If you close out, it goes right back to where you were, and you can click next. So this is where it gets a little interesting for which service line you are applying. You are eligible to apply for both Service Line 1, which is summer learning, and Service Line 2, which is summer feeding, or both. We anticipate that most of our programs will be doing one or the other and not both, but that does not mean that you cannot do both. We do want to be very clear that if you are applying for both, that you understand there is a feeding component required in Service Line 1 for summer learning. So if the summer feeding part that you're wanting to do is part and parcel of your summer learning program, keep it with that only and do not submit 2 applications. If, however, you are, hey, we're doing a summer learning program and we want to do a family feeding program on the weekends, that could be an example of 2 different applications, in which case you could click both. For the purposes of today, I'm going to show you 2 things. Say you say we just want to do a summer feeding program and you click next, it's going to jump straight to that part in the proposal. I'm going to click back really quick. If you say Service Line 1 or both, and I'm going to do both so I can walk you through everything today, it will go to Service Line 1 in the proposal. This is really where your project narrative is going to come into play. When it comes for summer learning, the training that we're offering next week is really going to help you understand all of the requirements that I'm going to go over here just now. This is a general description of your proposed program, thinking through how many children or youth you think you're going to serve, Last year, many of you served exclusively with CSC Leon funds, and then some of you were able to enhance existing services using those funds. So this way you can kind of determine, we're going to bring on, right? We're going to open up 3 new classrooms with these funds, and we're going to buy extra materials and whatnot for the entire, 8 classrooms that we already have. So that could differentiate who's being served exclusively with CSC Leon funds and who is just enhancing services for. We then want you to identify the age ranges of the children and youth that you are going to be serving, and what percentage of that total number of youth that you're going to serve fall within these targeted zip codes. You are not required to identify 5% in 01, 8% in 03, 14% in 04. You don't have to do any of that for your application, but just for us to get a rough idea of what is your anticipation of serving those targeted zip codes. We also want to know where your services are actually going to operate. So if you are a brick and mortar institution, right, located at 32310, that's what we're looking for. If you are operating at Governor's Charter, go ahead and put, I think that's 32308. I could be wrong on that, don't quote me. We want you to put that so we understand where you're actually operating. We also give you the opportunity to describe how you'll help overcome transportation barriers, explain your fee structure to families, and then we really get into some of our quality indicators about duration and dosage. You'll see this is lifted directly from the RFA and is equated directly to indicators for high quality programs. So you'll see here why we're asking for the information that we're asking for and having you to describe it. If you're not meeting our stated expectations, we do give you the opportunity to say why. It continues on with days of the week and how many hours per day. And then we go into feeding and nutrition. Again, this is lifted directly from the RFA and asking you to describe those feeding components and a place for you to upload all of your attachments, and then to give a sample activity and to describe the program activities. And then we dive into the last section of your proposal narrative, and that's program staffing. I cannot stress this enough. What we're looking for here is to make sure that you have thought through how to adequately staff your program so that you can do all the things that you're hoping to do, including market your program, do the data collection that's required, and do the reporting that is required. So we do ask for some background on your leads. We recognize sometimes that your program administrator and your primary manager might be 2 different people. So you can describe both of them or just put same as above if they are in fact the same. This section here for describing the background requirements and expectations, this is for any staff that's going to work directly with children. Are you requiring certified teachers? Are you doing level 2 background screening? Are they paraprofessionals? Are you doing a mental health component? So this is your opportunity to really describe what the requirements and backgrounds are of anybody who's going to be working directly with youth. Then we have for you to identify your student to teacher ratio. We recognize that this should differ based on the ages that you serve. If you're primarily serving high school kids and you're saying you have 20 students to 1 teacher, perfectly fine. If you're working with 5-year-olds, 20 to 1, maybe not so fine in terms of our quality standards. So again, when you take advantage of the trainings that we will provide to you next week to really understand what those best practices are for student to teacher ratios. And then, as I said, here's where you can describe your marketing and recruitment plan, your data collection plan, and reporting requirements. This last section, we are asking you to upload an organizational chart. And again, I'm going to point to our partners with Any. If you don't have an organizational chart, you're not quite sure how to build one, they can provide you a little bit of assistance through that training that they're going to be doing on the organizational profile. What we really want to see in your organizational chart is, what does your current staffing structure look like? And what would it look like if you receive all the funding for this program? So if you are, in fact, wanting to add on an additional classroom, does that mean that one whole position is funded by CSC, and indicate that on your organizational chart? Where it might get a little tricky is if you're doing an organizational chart and you're applying for both grants or both service lines, excuse me, thinking through maybe you indicate those positions in different colors so that you're not having to create an organizational chart for this one and an organizational chart for service line 2. Again, you can click save at any time and continue on. Similar to service line 1, we have service line 2 for summer feeding. A lot of this will look very similar in terms of describing your general program, the need for the program, the locations. Again, all of this is following the RFA. So if you've not started with the RFA, we strongly encourage you to read the RFA to understand what we are trying to get information from you for to make the application. If you anticipate as part of your feeding program that you're going to, for example, be a summer break spot with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, and part of that is that you have to store food. If that's part of what you're going to do, we need to make sure that you understand what those appropriate food storage practices are to support your proposed feeding plan. If you have questions about those, I do just want to give a shout out. I don't know if any of our Second Harvest partners and friends are on here, but they have close to 110 various partners around the Big Bend area that go through very comprehensive training. So if you don't know about appropriate food storage practices, I strongly recommend that you reach out to them. They do a lot of education on what that looks like, and you can find a lot of resources on their website. Same thing with FDACS, but their website's a little harder. There's a lot more information on the FDACS website, so it's a little harder to navigate. Again, we also are looking for demonstration of kind of your expertise in ensuring provision of balanced nutrition. What we don't want to see is, hey, we're going to do community feeding and we're going to, like, Hungry Howie's is going to come deliver pizza, for our community partners, for this community event every Friday night. Might not be the best use in terms of showing balanced nutrition. Now, if it's pizza plus salad plus fruit plus some other things, that's another story. It doesn't have to necessarily be, food provided by the government to make it balanced nutrition, but we definitely want to see that you're thinking through how do you provide balanced nutrition, and it's not just, chips and cookies and juice. Right. Very similar to what we showed you with summer learning is that program staffing structure, your admin, bio sketch, your primary manager. And again, do you have the staff structure and requirements to make sure that you can do the marketing and recruitment to hit those goal numbers that you've set, that you can do the data collection requirements and corresponding performance indicators, and making sure that you can hit those reporting expectations. Once you get through this part, we get to the end, and this is where the rubber meets the road. How much money do you actually want? If you click that you're only applying for service line 1, when you get to this screen, it's only going to show you service line 1. Similarly, for service line 2, if you clicked both, you'll see it as it is now. You'll see there's kind of a screen tip when you hover over your cost per child calculation. So you're going to say you're asking for, $20,000, and that's what you put in your total amount requested, and you plan to serve 40 children and youth with that, right? You're going to take your $20,000, divide that by 40, and you'll get your $500 cost per child. Simple math for it. Again, this section in terms of the budget is one of the topics that our partners at Any are going to be offering a training on, and they will talk a little bit more in detail about how you make this calculation for cost per child. Similarly, for summer feeding, it's just cost per meal instead of cost per child. So this is how many individuals will you serve. Now, keeping with our example of the Friday night pizza party, if that's what you're doing for your community event, and that's what you're requesting for, say you're expecting 50 families, and of those families, you're averaging about 3 people per family. So you're really thinking you're going to serve or feed 150 people. So that would equate to 150 meals for that particular event. So that's one way that you can think through making sure that you're calculating everything correctly. Now, for the proposed budget, on our website, there is a document, an Excel document that you can download, and that is the required template. Now, earlier when we asked you to upload your annual budget or your 990, that can be your template, anything that you have in your format. For the budget, you must use this template, and it must have a corresponding budget narrative. Again, Any will go over this in that third training that you'll see on their schedule. You must use this template. If you do apply for both of Service Line 1 and Service Line 2, you will be permitted to upload 2 documents. Keep your budget separate. We don't have unlimited funds, so it could be that you get funded for summer learning, but not summer feeding, or summer feeding and not summer learning. We want to be able to move forward with you as expeditiously as possible, so please keep your budgets separate for each request and think through how they are in fact separate. We are almost done with the portal. This section is not required, but it is strongly recommended. Remember, for organizational, like relevant experience and relationships, this is where we really want to see that you are connected to the community, and you can submit up to 3 letters of support for your project proposal. This does not mean that they are contributing or that you're getting match dollars, but it could mean that if that's part of the agreement or how you're working through for your proposal. It could be just strong letters of recommendation and kind of like what role they'll play. It could be we've worked with this organization in the past, but this is your opportunity to have those, in essence, letters of reference and that really are showing evidence of collaboration. That's what we're looking for in our letters of support. This section here is reminding you that you will have the opportunity to do a proposal presentation, and it's letting you know what the possible dates are. All the proposals are due on March 22nd. You will be informed by 9 p.m. the next day what your slot will be, and we'd love to be able to accommodate in any and all requests. But we first have to vet all of the proposals to make sure they are in fact responsive. If they are and they have all the required elements submitted with it, then you will be permitted to move into this presentation phase, and we'll try to grant your top 3. There's 6 options that you can choose from. You will be required to select at least 3 before it allows you to move forward. So for right now, oopsies, see, you have to do at least 3. I'm getting there. So I have said it. Here's the 3 that I want to do before you can continue on. So once you have continued on, these are the certification in the last part of the application. And it's basically saying that you have reviewed and certified that the content's accurate and complete. What you'll notice is that on all of those slides before, there's only a few that have that little red star that means they're required. It is your responsibility as the applicant to make sure that you go back and fill in everything. It's not going to give you an error message every single time that you leave something blank. So this is your final, go back and check before you do anything else. I'm going to click yes for the purposes of the training today. And then I go down to my next one. It says I certify that I'm authorized by the ED or the board of directors to submit this proposal on behalf of that organization. If you do not have express permission and you say, oh, no, I don't have that, and you click next, it's going to boot you out of the system. So I want to be clear that whoever is submitting it, make sure that you have that approval. You can always just go back. Now I'm going to say, yes, Sika has given me permission to make this application on behalf of CSC. When I click on next, I'm going to the electronic signature field. We did have this with an actual electronic signature opportunity where you can sign with your finger, but it's actually not ABA compatible. So instead, this is how we are basically certifying that inputting your first and last name in the fields below, then you agree that the insertion of this data constitutes your electronic signature. So I'm going to type in my name. Now I can click save and I'll get that message again. I can click print to make sure that I see it, or I can click submit. It's saying, sorry, only one entry is allowed because I've already inputted one. But if it works correctly, it will pop up and you'll see a nice, pretty purple envelope that says, congratulations, you've done it. Clearly, I've been testing the system and it's not letting me submit one. So that's something to know, is that if you've already submitted one, you can't come back and submit another. You'll have to use a different email address. All right. I know that was a lot of information going over the portal for you. I'm going to pause for just a moment before I bring the screen back up. And then we are going to continue on with the presentation. But if you have questions, we want to encourage you to drop them into the chat so for when we get to that section. All right. I think you should be able to see my screen now. Can I get a thumbs up from someone if you see my screen?
Yes, see your screen.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. So at this point, I'm going for...
Uh-oh.
It looks like we may have lost Holly. At this time, we're going to turn it over to our Program Accountability and Research Manager, Ms. Stephanie Eller-Vaughn, and she will walk us through results-based accountability.
Hi there. Nice to meet everyone virtually. I look forward to getting to know you and working with you in the coming months. For those of you who received funding last summer, you may notice that data collection and reporting requirements are somewhat different than last year. This shift is purposeful, and my role is to help you understand the requirements and meet these expectations if you are selected for funding. CSC Leon is charged with demonstrating that our investment in programs is valuable and worthy of continuation. We hope to enhance program quality through training such as the sessions planned for next week and into the future. We will communicate those results of the impact of your programs on the children that we've served. In the very near future, we plan to introduce and require all community investment partners to use the results-based accountability framework, which will help you measure impact. This is a framework where we start with desired outcomes and work backwards to determine actionable items to affect the change we desire. This concept may be new to you, so we want to introduce this now as something to expect in future funding cycles, but be assured we will provide training along the way. With regard to the data collection requirements that apply to you for this funding cycle, I'm going to address summer learning first, and then I'll move to summer feeding. So for summer learning, if you happen to be following along on the RFA, it begins on page 8 or 9. The number one item under data collection is we are requiring funded programs to collect basic demographic information on each program participant. The specific information required will be outlined in the final contract, but we would like for you to start thinking about how and when you will collect these data to make this process easier. One suggestion is to collect the required information in the student's application or sign-up form. That way you can collect the information without going to any extra effort. Regardless of how you choose to collect the data, funded programs are required to upload the information into CSC Services and Services and Activities Management Information System, or SAMIS. Collecting and reporting the data will take staff time, so please plan accordingly with your budgeting and staffing proposal. I can't stress that enough. The second item under data collection is daily attendance. Attendance is one method for measuring program quality, and it's usually indicative of programming that is interesting and engaging. Programs are required to track and report daily attendance. To better understand the hallmarks of quality summer programming, we strongly encourage you to attend one of the 2 information sessions we're hosting next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, so that you can plan your programming and structure your application accordingly. Holly will drop the links to the registration for the sessions in the chat. For each week that you provide programming, you will be required to input attendance records 2 days after the last programmatic day of the week. For example, if you provide programming Monday through Thursday, you will have until Monday, end of day Monday, to update your attendance records. If programming goes until Friday, you will have until the end of the following Tuesday to input attendance. Attendance information must be uploaded into SAMUS weekly and not just scanned sign-in sheets or staff checklists. So this is on you guys. Some programs may opt to use specific tools such as an iPad for check-in and check-out purposes, which can help automate your process to some extent. Again, please consider how much staff time will be required to meet these expectations and the method by which you plan to take attendance and budget accordingly. The third item is a parent caregiver consent form to access student school records, which we will provide. While we don't require that parents give their permission as a condition of participation in funded programs, we do require that the funded programs collect this form from the parent or caregiver and keep it on file. The reason for this requirement is that research tells us that children who participate in high quality summer enrichment opportunities experience greater academic retention than those children who do not. So in partnership with Leon County Schools, CSC Leon plans to create a baseline measure of summer academic retention for kids who attend our funded summer programs in hopes of gaining a better understanding of what it takes to mitigate summer slide. The fourth item is a parent caregiver satisfaction survey. This is a very brief 6-question survey provided by us, requesting feedback on the overall experience of the family, the level of satisfaction with the program staff, and whether the parent would recommend the program to other parents. These surveys can be administered in a variety of ways, but must be input into SAMUS. So SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, both are inexpensive tools that are easy to distribute, and they calculate responses automatically. You may opt for traditional pen and paper, depending on your population. However you choose to administer the survey, please budget staff time and tool expense accordingly. The fifth and final deliverable is a student strength pre and post assessment. Funded programs will receive the required tools for the appropriate age group and any training needed to administer the survey, which contains about 20 questions and can take on average about 8 minutes or so to complete. The due date for survey completion will depend on your program's start and end date, and these surveys are intended to measure gains in a variety of non-academic skills, such as resiliency and self-esteem. Teenagers will complete the pre and post survey themselves. For elementary school age children, you should work with parents to assess their child. We suggest you consider the pre-assessment, again, as a required part of the participant application or sign-up form to make collecting the data easier. Again, pre and post-assessment results will need to be added to each participant's file in SAMUS, and we anticipate this could be rather time-intensive. So please budget staff time accordingly. So here I'm going to pause and allow for you to drop any questions in the chat before moving on. We will come back at the end and answer questions collectively. Okay, so I guess we'll just go ahead and move straight into summer learning performance indicators. The percentiles for each of these items will automatically be calculated in SAMUS based on the data you report, and we will be monitoring those data on a rolling basis. We expect our funded programs to meet the following targets. Number one, 100% of program participants, caregivers, or parents will complete the parental consent form. This was mentioned earlier. We expect all programs to collect permission forms granting or denying permission to access school performance records for every single child participating. Item number two, 95% of program participants will complete a student strength pre-assessment within the first week of participation. Again, if this is If this is required as part of the participant application, your required data will be collected before the first day of attendance, and this will be much easier on you. Please think through how you plan to administer these assessments, as they have approximately 20 questions. While you are welcome to administer these electronically or via paper, please be mindful that entering data manually can be quite time consuming. A little research on the front end could save a lot of time on the back end. For item number 3, we are requiring that 80% of program participants who completed a student strength pre-assessment will complete the post-assessment at the conclusion of the program, or at least 4 weeks later. We realize that it may be more challenging to get a post-assessment survey completed from parents, and that programs may experience some attrition or dropout, thus the lower percentage. The 4th data requirement, or a performance indicator requirement, is that 70% of and this one's a little trickier, 70% of program participants will attend at least 80% of the available days offered by the program. So in other words, if your program is 4 weeks long, Monday through Friday, the total days a child can possibly attend is 20. 80% of total available days is 16. So to make things simple, let's say you enroll 10 kids. We would expect 70% of your participants, or 7 kids, to attend 16 days each. The attendance manual in SAMUS will calculate this percentage for you. And the last but not least, number 5 is that 90% of program participants, caregivers, or parents will report satisfaction, meaning satisfied or very satisfied with the program. We realize you cannot force parents to complete a survey, but you can strongly encourage participation. And one way to meet this goal might be to offer some type of incentive, such as completing the survey, such as being entered into a drawing for maybe a $20 gift card for all parents who complete the survey. So now I'm going to switch gears and talk about the data collection requirements for summer feeding. This only applies to those applying for summer feeding and not for the meal provision requirement in the summer learning RFA. So if you're following along in the RFA, you'll see these on page 12. So number 1, under summer feeding, the total number of meals provided per location per week. So you will be required to have some sort of tracking mechanism for how you define a meal and how many you distribute to who and where. We want you to consider how you will collect these data, who will collect it, and who will be responsible for reporting it in SAMUS each week. So the second data requirement is basic demographic details for families served, such as age, grade, race, gender, and zip code. Now, while we would love to have all of the finer details for every individual receiving food, we are cognizant that some people may be uncomfortable about sharing these details, and therefore we ask you to just simply get as much information as possible, and at the very least, track the number of participants by zip code. Recipients should not be denied access because they don't choose to disclose any personal details. But this information must be uploaded into SAMUS no later than the Tuesday following the week of meal provision. So item number 3 under summer feeding is the parent caregiver feedback form or survey. Programs are required to invite families to participate in feedback using an online survey, which we will provide. It's a short survey. It's optional for families, should not be required to receive or continue receiving meals. We will monitor survey participation and share the results with the funded programs. For this item, please think through how you will market the survey and who will be responsible for working with CSC to monitor participation and make adjustments based on feedback. So now I'm going to move into the summer feeding performance indicators. This list is short and sweet. Number 1 is that programs will meet or exceed food distribution goals during the course of the project. Basically, you need to demonstrate that you did what you say you would do in the grant application. Simple. Number 2, programs will meet or exceed weekly food distribution goals 90% of the time. For each week that meals are provided, we would expect you to input the total of meals served into SAMUS, and our system will automatically calculate the percentage of goal achieved. We expect providers to meet an average 90% of goal. Thus, if you stated in your application that you expected to disseminate 1,000 meals each week, we would expect that you successfully distribute 900 meals each week on average. So now we will move into the final segment of our presentation, which is reporting requirements. I've already discussed the first item, so I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Dina Snyder to discuss the remaining reporting requirements.
Thank you, Stephanie. All contract recipients for service line 1 and 2 will provide regular reports through a standardized template in SAMUS. For summer learning, these reports will include weekly attendance reports to include demographic data on the children and youth served. The reports are due no later than the second business day following the end of the previous week. For example, again, if the program is from Monday through Friday, the weekly reports will be due by the following Tuesday. The midsummer report is due by Monday, July 10th. The report will include at minimum a brief narrative, status report on data collection, aggregate results from the pre-assessment survey, and overview of the expenditures through June 30th of 2023. The final report is due no later than Friday, September 15th. This report will include a complete program narrative, final attendance records, aggregated results from pre and post assessment surveys, aggregated results from the family satisfaction survey, and a detailed expenditure report through August 30th. For summer feeding, the weekly distribution reports will include demographic information on the children, youth, and families served if it is known, and will also be due no later than the second day following the end of the previous week. The midsummer report will also be due by Monday, July 10th. This report will include a brief narrative status report on the data collection and an overview of the expenditures also through June 30th of 2023. The final report is due no later than Friday, September 15th. This report will include a complete program narrative, the final distribution records, and a detailed expenditure report through August 30th. Unspent funds are required to be returned to CSC Leon no later than September 30th. Given the 30th of September for this year falls on a Saturday, funds returned via mail must be postmarked by September 30th, or they can be placed in a sealed envelope and dropped off at CSC Leon's office in the drop box by September 30th. Next slide, please. There will be 2 disbursements made to funded programs during summer bridge funding. The contract must be duly executed to receive the initial funds disbursement. The initial disbursement is intended to cover program budget expenses from May 15th to July 15th. This 15-day startup timeframe provides revenue to programming to begin on June 1st. Upon review and approval of the Community Investment Partners Midsummer Report that is due on July 10th, the second and final disbursement will be issued to cover program budget expenses from July 16th through August 30th. Please remember again that unspent funds must be returned to CSC Leon no later than September 30th. Community Investment Partners will not be considered for future funding until all requirements of any current contract are met. As a reminder, you are able to access our fiscal guidelines on our website. Please take the time to review these as they summarize how CSC Leon will fund programs and services. I will transition now over to Holly for the review of the timeline.
Thank you so much, Dina. Really appreciate that. And apologies for earlier when I cut out. I had this whole great introduction plan for Stephanie, and thank you, Dina, for picking that up. My technology just does not, Zoom and PowerPoint are not liking each other today. So timeline review. As you know, we released our funding announcement on Monday, February 6th. It was around 5:15. We are going to give everyone until 6 p.m. as kind of like our cutoff date. Some of us work earlier hours, some of us work later hours. Just so you're not under the crunch of that 5 p.m. deadline, we're going to give you a little leeway. Any questions that you do submit, we are asking that you submit them in writing. All of those that you have submitted today in the chat will constitute as a submission. After this training, though, all questions must be sent to procurement@cscleon.org. Please do not contact a member of council or another member of the team by sending it to procurement@cscleon.org. We can make sure that they all get collated together, and we will be posting a collective response on that same link that I just dropped into the chat where it says Access CIP Fiscal Guidelines. Also there, you'll find that FAQ document. It'll include all the questions from today and any that we have received by that deadline by email, the full question and the full answers. The proposal deadline is March 22nd. Another change this year. It's not just 21 days. We wanted to give a full 6 weeks for you to review this, be comfortable with it, get some training that you need before submitting your actual proposal. The portal will close at 6 p.m. And for any of those of you who might have participated last year, you would have seen that if you did not hit submit by that deadline, it kicked you out of the system and it did not let you continue. So we don't want to see that happen. Make sure that you have access to the system, that you have that link as you save as you go, and make sure that you're getting to that submission screen where it has a big purple check that says thank you. That's what you're looking for. Provider presentations will take place Monday through Wednesday, March 27th through the 29th. These will likely be held at our CSC office, again, 2002 Old St. Augustine Road. You will receive a calendar invite for your secured time, as well as an outline of what you'll be expected to cover. The public meeting to discuss scores will take place on Wednesday, April 5th at 10 a.m. at our council office. This is a public meeting, and the scores based on the evaluator manuals will be made public. Please know that the first round of scores are what we call preliminary scores. And then we go through a process called inter-rater reliability, in which the evaluators assigned to the various groups will have the opportunity to discuss why they voted a certain way and be given the opportunity to make any adjustments to their scoring before they submit a final score for each of the proposals. This will be done completely in the sunshine. You will have access to know who scored what individual score sheets were. All of that will be made public and completely done in a very transparent process. But know that the total score that was first published for that April 5th meeting might change based on that session that we're calling inter-rater reliability. In some ways, this helps. So say, for example, one proposal received perfect 10s across the way, except one evaluator gave them a 7 or a 3, and you're just like, oh, hey, but let's talk about, did they read something wrong? Was it a clerical error? Like what might have been the reasoning for that? Now, at no point does an evaluator have to change their score, but it does give us the opportunity to understand why someone might have scored really high or really poor in a given category. After that, the public meeting to select the final proposals will be done by the council themselves. That will take place on Thursday, April 20th. That meeting is set to start at 4 p.m. That is our regular governing council meeting, so there will be a variety of other topics on the agenda for April 20th. But that is when they will make that final determination of who gets funded based on those scoring that they received from the volunteers panels. At that point, based on that determination, the very next day, CSC staff will send out a notification alerting anybody who was selected for funding and anyone who was not selected for funding what the next steps in the process are. So that is the timeline. Again, those two public meetings, anyone is welcome to attend. If presuming that there's no technological issues, they will be live streamed on our YouTube channel. For those of you who are used to our YouTube channel, you know there's been a couple of hiccups once or twice, but we are now in our official space, and we invite you to come visit us in our space this Friday. We're actually hosting an open house, so if you want to come check it out, please join us 3 to 6. That'd be great to have you out there. But that should be, those meetings should be live streamed if you just want to stay abreast of what's happening instead of being there in person. And with that, we're going to go into questions and answers. So as we're going through the questions, I'm going to stop sharing and hopefully it's not going to kick me off. There we go. And Dina has actually been collating all of the questions that you have submitted in your chat. We're going to start up at the top, and she's going to read out the questions, and then I'll facilitate the Q&A. I might answer some of them. I might punt to one of my colleagues. Sika's with us, and so we'll kind of do our best to verbally answer these questions, but know that the written answers will be clarified in actual writing and posted on our website on March 23rd. And with that, Dina.
Okay, we'll get started. We have a few questions that came through. The first one was already answered with regards to the PowerPoint being available. The second one, if educators are employees of Leon County schools, will there be a need for us to perform background checks?
Sika, I'm going to call on you to answer the question of background screening.
So good afternoon, everyone. If the, and I'll have some remarks a little bit later as well, but if you are employing for your summer programming certified teachers through the state of Florida, either working in Leon County or have worked in another county and they have a current teacher's certificate and are currently employed at a public school, we can't speak for private school, but for public schools, we know that their background checks have been done, that they've gone through the clearinghouse, and they have all of the necessary clearance, if you will, to be able to work with children. You just need to note that. And if they have either a copy of their certificate or a number on the certificate, just put it there so that if we have any kind of operational auditing, we can show that you employed a certified teacher. There is no need to go through background checks for certified teachers in the state of Florida. Now, the other side of that, if they are not certified in the state of Florida, they are certified in another state, then you will need to do the background check. Especially if it is a state that does not have reciprocity with Florida. And I am not at this time familiar with any state that currently has reciprocity with Florida when it comes to the teaching, the certified teaching certificate. So if you have any questions after that, you can check in with any and we can investigate further. For any other team members, so for example, you are employing for the summer after hours when they are not working, they are a case manager with a community-based care agency. Currently, they have background screening and they also have proof of that background screening. You can have that in your files. Although I can't imagine that a DCM would have the time to work in a summer program. So hopefully that answered that question.
Thank you, Sika. I want to add to that, all of that, if you are selected for funding, will be clarified in your contract. And that information, that level of detail is not needed for your application. I would suggest that if you don't know who you're going to hire and you're putting together your budget, that you include enough funds to do the required background screening as if they weren't certified, because you would rather have the budget and not need it than not have the budget and need it. Next question, Dina.
Okay. Is the budget percentage and org chart information provided for the program or the entire organization?
In the first part of the application, when it's under the organizational profile, that is for your, that's for the entire organization. It's looking for your financial solvency, like understanding what your whole organization does. So say you are, I don't know why ABC Learning just like popped up in my brain, but say your organization is ABC Learning and you do 6 different types of programs. You have like an early child care facility, you have an after school program. You might have an after school program that has its own budget, but as an organization, we're just looking for your entire organizational program. The budget template that you upload for what you're asking for would just be for the program that you're looking for. And for the organizational chart, the same would be true, is that we're looking for your whole organization piece and then understanding what is relevant to the proposal. So think whole organization, and then in your proposal, that's where you really hone in on how this program would buttress into or fit into or supplement what you have.
Okay. What is the pool of money? Is there a cap for the ask?
So Sika, I'm going to turn this over to you again to talk a little bit about what is budgeted.
So currently, as posted on our website, the final approved budget allocated $1.5 million for, actually, I think it was $1.6 million for summer programming. That being said, the council can decide to allocate every dime of that. They could decide to only allocate a portion of it. They could also decide that your program applications were so stellar and they all came in at 90% or better, and they want to add more money to that pool to allocate. So while the budget says 1.6 million, it is at the discretion of the council to either allocate additional funds through their vote or only allocate up to that 1.6. As far as a cap on your ask, there is not a cap on what you can request. Keep in mind that last summer, we had up to 2 million appropriated or allocated for summer learning. Our ask, I think, came up to almost 4 million. Some asked for a small amount, some asked for a very, very large amount. So just keep in mind that CSC Leon reserves the right to either fund your full ask or a portion thereof. If it is a portion thereof, you have the right to refuse if that's what you want to do.
Great.
Okay. Can you say a little more about the SAMIS system? How much identifying information about each child will be required? And then question mark as to parents, as if will there be required information for parents?
There will be a detailed training for any entity selected for funding that goes into the finer details of the SAMIS system. There will be clearly there will be consent for collecting that information in terms of personal identifiers. So should your application be selected, that will be clarified in your contract and in your kind of handbook for doing business with us.
Okay. Let's see. Can you also talk about who is scoring the applications and if everyone is seeing every application? If not, how are the applications divided among scorers? Can we see the scoring scales for the higher points awarded as mentioned in the RFA? For example, higher points for multiple meals or higher points for 5 days a week. And I know that had multiple parts, so I can break it down if needed.
So we will be later this week releasing a call for volunteers, and we'll rely on community volunteers to become scorers. Each volunteer will receive training and an evaluation manual, as well as be required to submit a disclosure form related to anything that they might serve on a board for, or if there's any financial connection to any particular children serving agencies here in Leon County. Based on that, and then as the applicants come in, they will be divided up amongst them, depending upon their disclosures. It is, and depending upon how many applications we receive will determine if all scorers will review every single application or if it will be broken up. Given that this is our second time round, last summer we had 8 different service lines, and we were forced, based on the number of applications that came in, to divide and conquer based on those service lines. So similarly, we do intend to do that, where all the applications for service line 2, summer feeding, will be reviewed by one set of volunteers, and for service line 1 will be reviewed for another. Now, if we receive 80 applications for service line 1 and we only have 7 reviewers, there is a chance that we would recruit a few extra and then split those up so that we're able to manage the workload. We unfortunately won't fully know that until we have, until that date comes where we know how many responsive applications we have. The training, the manual, all of that will be made public throughout the process in terms of how everything is scored. In the RFA, it breaks down what the scoring criteria will be, and at the event on March, April 5th, that will be part of that public agenda. So that all will be made public, including the scales for how higher points are awarded.
Holly, let me also interject that last summer, for those of you who applied, and also for those of you who applied and were funded, we did not have inter-rater reliability. So we had the scores, and then we compiled from there. This year, we will have inter-rater reliability, which, as you know, allows any of the scorers to augment or change their scores based on the input that they get from the other scorers. So we feel really confident that we will have an even better evaluation process this year than we did last year. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my exercise in, so I'm doing elliptical as I'm talking. So that's why I'm breathing the way that I am.
I love it. I love it. I think I answered all the questions, Gina, that were included in that one.
Our next question is, can you send us the pre and post-test assessments to review?
Those assessment items will be given again to any of those who are our contracted CIPs, and it will become part of that, and training will be provided. If a request for that tool is made, we can certainly discuss that internally to publish which tools that we are going to use, and we will get with any to include that in program design training.
Okay. Are we responsible for creating the pre and post surveys for participants?
No, you are not responsible for that. Stephanie, kind of gonna put you on the spot in terms of you, in your presentation, you talked about, well, we'll provide you the questions. You had some suggestions for how they may administer those surveys. You are muted.
Is that better?
Yes.
So yes, we are using a validated and reliable survey instrument, and the main thing we want you to think about is that with 20 questions on both the pre and the post assessment, there will be some time involved to capture that data, unless you choose to do it in some electronic form. And my understanding is that we hope to have a method by which you can upload data from an Excel file. I don't want to overstep my bounds on that, but I believe that that is what we are anticipating. And so hopefully you don't have to capture extra keystrokes. But the surveys are already created, and you don't have to worry about that.
Thank you.
Okay, our next question, is there a minimum number of participants for the summer learning program?
There is not a minimum number. We will let you know, however, you will be required to do a cost per child calculation. So if you ask for $15,000 and you're only going to serve one child, that means that your cost per child is $15,000, in which case how you're scored, you are on that item alone will be scored for creating best value. Is a $15,000 per child program feasible in comparison to other options that are available? Probably not.
And the last question in our chat, following up regarding SAMIS again, it is important to understand before we apply how much private information we will be required to provide about the people we serve and who has access to it and what it will be used for.
So I can start this and then I'm going to turn it over to Fika. I'm going to answer the who has access to it. In an ideal world, the only individuals that have access to your program's data, not in an ideal world, the only individuals who have access to your program's data will be your team, anyone whom you give a SAMIS login to. Maybe that is just the program administrator, and that is fine. And then CSC Leon staff only. We do have, in terms of our IT provider, they would have technically the ability to go in, but even theirs is it's not saved on a shared server with other individuals. It is our own private data that only we have access to, that we can delineate that. So, for example, if you're inputting information on your program participants, the organization next to you will never be able to see that information, even if you're serving the same family. Where I was going with in an ideal world, eventually it would be amazing if we were able to say program A is serving, Alicia, and program B is serving Alicia, and we're able to do that match. But because of data security privacy, that is not an option at this point. We are not there, and we are not suggesting that it would be tainted or connected in that way. Now I'll turn it over to Fika, because I think that there's a little deeper question in there, and I'll have her respond to.
Right. So when you talk about what the data will be used for, it will be used for our reporting. However, it is important that we can delineate that the actual person, be it the parent or the child, is an actual living person. Therefore, the information that you collect as a program operator, you're going to collect a name, you're going to collect an address, you're going to collect a phone number, you're going to collect a parent name. Depending on those who are funded, when you are trained on SAMIS, you will then know the information that we are going to require so that we can show that, in fact, if you served 1,000 children all summer, all 1,000 of those children are living human beings. If you go back online and look at, and you probably got a link to it, the community investment partner documents, which include the guideline as well as the data security piece, not only are we holding ourselves to a certain standard when it comes to IT security, we are holding anyone with whom we contract to that same, if not higher, security. Now, if the deeper question is, will CSC Leon be reaching out to your participants? At this juncture, no. Can I say that for in the future? I don't know. We might want to go in and talk with someone and see if we can get testimonies, but most importantly, you all as providers need to have the clearances on file for anything that you may use that information for. So for example, if you are taking photos of your participants and they are younger than 18, you need to get a clearance from their parents saying that it is okay to not only take that photo, but it is okay to use it. If it is parents, you have to get their permission that it's okay to use their likeness and things of that nature. If you are getting testimonials, and last year we did this as a training, as we look to put together our final report, we more than likely will do another training to show you how to get those testimonials without being identifying to the people who participate. So as safe as data can be, and I say that because we know that we've got an issue going on in our community, and quite frankly, it's not a matter of if it happens. Anyone in IT will tell you it's a matter of when it happens. And so that's why you put all of the safeguards in place. We want to ensure that you are monitoring your data and keeping it safe on your side, and we will do the same thing on our side. If you end up being one of our funded entities and need to go a little bit deeper about this when you start the training on SAMIS and the information that we're requesting, then we can absolutely do that. What I don't want is for you all to overthink it and maybe make a decision not to apply because you are afraid of what data we are going to collect. Our desire is not to make this difficult or make it seem like we're collecting a whole bunch of data just to hold on to it. We want to make sure we have the data that can clearly show the good work that you're doing, document that, and that the CSC funding from the taxpayers is making a difference in our community.
Thank you for that, Stika. If I can add two things that Stephanie covered earlier, and just to kind of remind you. One is for summer learning, there is actually a consent form for sharing personal identifying information. And if you recall what Stephanie said, we 100% need that consent form signed, but it doesn't mean that they are consenting to give that data. They could be denying that data. And so I just want to be very clear that for summer learning, our goal is to do a matching process of those students who are participating in summer learning with our partners at Leon County Schools. And that's what that parental consent is. But your student can say, no thanks, I'm going to sign, in essence, a declination letter denying you access to that. Now, how you choose to track within the system, right? Maybe you don't say that it's, Angel Smith is the person that you are, and you put that much identifying information, and rather all you want to do is AS and then track some participant information that will not be shared. But if they do consent and you have that information, our goal would then to go into Leon County Schools is to find Angel Smith and to do some comparative analysis. Again, you control that consent, and that's why it's listed there. For summer feeding, again, I'm going to echo something that Stephanie said. We do not want the collection of data to preclude people from accessing services in any way, shape, or form. If you're able to get the information by zip code, by numbers, whatever that might be, you don't have to be Angel Smith, who lives at 2222 St. Augustine Avenue, right? And is this in this grade? She's a female. She's, she's African American, and she's got 4 siblings. Like, you don't have to get that level of detail. Again, we're going to, for anyone who is selected as a funded entity, there will be data collection training provided directly to you once you are received. In terms of the assessment information for how we track that, again, going back to summer learning for pre and post, and I think that Stephanie said this, we're not going to have you evaluate their math gains if you're a literacy program, or their literacy gains if you're a math program. It is a student strengths assessment that is around resiliency and self-esteem, those concepts that are applicable across all domains, all types of programs. So I think that I'm hoping that clarified those questions. Dina, I know that we're over time, so thanks everyone for hanging with us. Are there a few more questions?
Yes, I was just going to say we did get a few more questions come through while the other ones were being answered. Can we serve parents and children, families, or just children?
For summer learning, the focus is on serving school-age children. For summer feeding, it is open.
Can we use Kahoot to capture pre and post data?
Maybe. I think that you can get creative with how we administer it. Definitely, probably with this, the satisfaction surveys, that we can certainly be creative. If you are selected for summer funding, then you'll be working with Stephanie to make sure that you feel comfortable designing the tool, as opposed, it does not have to be just pencil and paper for that, right? So I think Kahoots is a really clever way of engaging students and can make it fun. But we will, again, if you're selected for summer funding, our team will be working with you to ensure your success and making sure that how you administer those tools are in line and don't change the acquisition of data.
And we have one final question again. Do you have a partnership with Leon County Schools so they can assist us with getting children and family data to help us with contacting potential program participants?
Sika, I saw you jump up, so go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Okay.
So we are currently in communication with Leon County Schools, but any agreement that we would have with them does not extend to any contracts between providers and us. So the next question would be, well, how do we identify the families and the children that would use our services? So there are a couple of things. Number one, our needs assessment on the website, and I'm sure Holly is going to put a link to it on the application site, the RFA site. While it is from kind of 21, 22, it still is very good data regarding zip codes, neighborhoods, and census tracts. So once you know that, you can identify the schools that fall within those zip codes and census tracts and target those particular schools. Additionally, City of Tallahassee has community centers available in just about every zip code. You can use that for outreach methods as well. I would say use churches. Think about how you would outreach for your program, because remember, these have to be programs that are currently operating. So there has to be some sort of outreach component that you are using. This kind of goes back to data. We don't want to just have access to data for the sake of having access to data. Yeah, so that's the answer to the question. Go ahead, Holly.
I was just going to add, principals are really responsive, and all of their email addresses, I would say my experience with principals have been that they are very responsive. And if you don't have if you're trying to target students at a particular school and you don't have a relationship with that principal, I would recommend you do that outreach now. There has not been a single principal that I have done outreach to, either in my professional capacity or in my volunteer capacity, working on other types of just programs and projects, that hasn't been responsive. It might take you a while. You might have to send a couple of emails, but they are busy people. But I would strongly recommend that if you're looking to target a particular school, meet with that principal, find out what they need. I know last year, one of our summer programs had a fantastic relationship with the principal at their neighborhood school, and was able to leverage their programs specifically to meet the mutual needs, not only of their community center and of that program, but also that particular school. So we would strongly recommend that. Any other questions, Dina?
Yeah, we have one more question. Is the assessment evidence-based, or did you all create it?
Stephanie, I'm going to turn that over to you.
So I can't see okay, I'm not muted. So the survey itself is not evidence-based. It's tested for validity and reliability, which are the measures that you would want to use to determine whether or not the results can be reproducible with a survey instrument, and whether or not you get consistent results over time. And so it is valid. It's been tested for validity and reliability, and it will be a highly effective tool.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple of more. Great, that is great. What's its name so we can look it up?
So Kelly, yeah, so that question, we will provide that information to our funded organizations. We did not use a particular assessment in its totality. So we're not trying to have an assessment that's going to take forever to fill out. It's a short, quick, and to the point. So we will provide that to the funded agencies. Again, our goal is to make you successful, and our goal is to really get good information so that over time we know how the programs are working that we fund.
One more question. If parents are used in their child's classroom, do we need background checks on them?
Okay, so I want to be sure I understand that. So if you're running a summer program and you are using a parent or parents of the children in the program in their classroom, the answer is yes. They have to have a background check because they are working with other people's kids.
I think that that's the important message, is any adults that are going to be working with children need to be background screened. I think that if they're a volunteer, even those have to be, even have to have some level of screening. And I think that we can probably clarify that in the contract process, that if you're relying on volunteers, that it might not be a full level 2 background screen, but there is definitely a background screen for anyone who might even volunteer with your program.
And the last thing I was going to say is, remember, adult is considered anyone of 18 years and older.
Did we reach the end, Dina?
That is all the questions in the chat. Oh, yep. No, that's it. I thought something else came up, but nope.
So again, in terms of next steps, you will receive a link to this recording and the slide deck. They will also be posted on the 2023 summer funding page on our website. And then the full list of FAQs will be published on March 23rd after we receive all of the questions. If you have another question or you're viewing this online and you're like, ooh, I have a question that wasn't asked, send it to procurement@cscleon.org by the due date, and we will make sure that that gets included and posted in the final document.
So the last thing I'll say before we let you go, if I can, Holly, were you
Yeah, no, I was just about to say, and now Sika, take it away.
So it is 4:33. Thank you for sticking with us for a little bit of time. Listen, couple things. This is different from last summer. So if you applied last summer and you look at that RFA and look at this RFA and say, my gosh, what they've been doing all year, a whole lot. So we are in full gear trying to ensure that not only is our taxpayer funds being used to move the needle, but that we can show that, and we can show that by outcomes, and we can show the good work that you are doing. Remember, any data that we have as we compile that and release that, that is a part of your story too. It's not just our story, it's your story. Be sure to read the RFA completely. Ask the questions through the email. And the last thing I will say is when we did the analysis last year, the programs that were funded were programs that participated in the technical assistance, the capacity building. They asked questions, they got those answers. So while this was not required, I think you are already taking step one by having participated in this. So we are very pleased to have you here. Thank you so much. And with that, I think we'll adjourn, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great afternoon.